The halls of Starlight Children's Hospital once rang with laughter and hope, but lately, the air was thick with uncertainty. The hospital, a sanctuary for sick children, was now struggling to keep its doors open. Funding had dried up, and without urgent help, they would soon have to close the pediatric cancer ward, a place where so many young warriors were fighting for their lives. Dr. Emily Carter, the hospital director, sat in her dimly lit office, her head resting on her hands. The latest batch of bills lay in front of her, each one a reminder of the impossible situation they faced. They had exhausted every avenue, fundraisers, grants, pleas to the public. Nothing had been enough. She sighed deeply, rubbing her temples as she looked at a photo of a group of children on her desk, patients she had treated over the years, some who had beaten the odds, and others who had not been as fortunate. A gentle knock on the door startled her. It was Nurse Helen, holding a cup of coffee and offering a sympathetic smile. "You need a break, Emily. You've been in here all night." Dr. Carter exhaled, taking the coffee with a grateful nod. "I can't stop now. If we don't find a way, we'll have to start sending these kids home, some with no options left." Outside, in one of the hospital rooms, a 7-year-old boy named Liam clutched his mother's hand. He had been battling leukemia for over a year, and though he remained brave, the fear in his mother Sarah's eyes was unmistakable. She had done everything she could, working extra shifts, organizing local fundraisers, and even writing letters to wealthy donors. But hope was fading fast. That evening, Dr. Carter met with the hospital's board, and the decision was grim. If they didn't secure funding soon, they would have to start cutting critical services. The thought of turning away sick children was unbearable. Little did they know, a miracle was already in motion. The next day, as the sun peeked over the horizon, an unassuming man in a baseball cap and sunglasses entered the hospital lobby. He walked quietly, observing the tired nurses, the worried parents, the children who smiled despite their pain. He saw kindness in every corner, nurses holding children's hands, doctors working tirelessly, volunteers reading to patients. He watched as a young girl in a wheelchair struggled to move on her own, only to be helped by a fellow patient, a boy no older than 8. The selflessness in these walls was humbling. He stopped by the hospital's small cafeteria, where Liam was sitting in a wheelchair, sketching in a notebook. His mother had stepped away for a moment, leaving him lost in his drawings. The man approached gently, glancing at the picture of a superhero with a big heart. "Hey there, buddy. That's a great drawing. Who's that?" Liam looked up, his blue eyes lighting up. "It's the Guardian. He helps people when they are in trouble." The man smiled. "Sounds like a real hero." Liam nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, he comes when people least expect it and saves the day." The man's heart clenched. He knelt beside Liam and ruffled his hair. "I think the world could use more people like the Guardian." At that moment, Liam's mother, Sarah, returned and immediately recognized the stranger. Her breath caught in her throat. "Keanu Reeves," she whispered. The man gave her a small, humble smile and nodded. "Just here to visit." Sarah blinked in disbelief. What are you doing here?" "I heard this place needed help," Keanu said simply, glancing around. "And I wanted to see for myself." Word quickly spread through the hospital that Keanu Reeves was visiting, but he didn't want to cause a scene. Instead, he quietly moved from room to room, spending time with the children. He sat beside a teenage girl named Ava, who had been battling a rare disorder for years. She had loved action movies all her life, but the cost of her treatment had meant no trips to the cinema for as long as she could remember. "You ever seen The Matrix?" Keanu asked with a grin. Ava's eyes widened. "Only about 1,000,000 times. You're Neo, the real Neo." Keanu laughed. "How about I teach you some of the moves?" For the next 15 minutes, he showed her how to do the famous bullet dodge maneuver, making her giggle so hard she nearly forgot about her pain. In another room, he found a little boy named Miguel, who had been too weak to get out of bed for weeks. But as soon as Keanu sat beside him and started talking about motorcycles, the boy's face lit up. By the end of their conversation, Keanu had promised him a signed helmet from one of his personal collection. He played chess with an elderly patient, read stories to a group of kids in the playroom, and even helped a nurse pass out snacks to the younger children. Every moment he spent there, he brought light, making even the sickest patients feel like superheroes. The next morning, Dr. Carter was preparing for another grueling day when her secretary burst into the office, eyes wide with shock. "You need to see this," she gasped, handing over a piece of paper. Dr. Carter took it, frowning as she scanned the contents. Her hands began to tremble. It was a confirmation of a massive donation. Enough money to cover all outstanding bills, purchase new medical equipment, and, most importantly, keep the pediatric cancer ward open. Her heart pounded. There was no name attached, just a small note. "For the real heroes. Keep fighting. A friend." Tears welled in her eyes as she clutched the paper to her chest. Whoever this friend was had just saved countless lives. Across the hospital, Liam and Sarah were watching the morning news in his room when the announcement broke. The reporter spoke about an anonymous donor who had saved Starlight Children's Hospital. Sarah covered her mouth, eyes brimming with tears. She turned to Liam, who was grinning from ear to ear. "It was him," Liam whispered. "The Guardian." Sarah nodded, knowing in her heart that Keanu Reeves had just done what he always did: help without seeking recognition, given without expecting anything in return. As the hospital's halls filled with laughter and relief once more, Keanu walked out of the building, pulling his cap lower over his face. His job here was done, and somewhere in a small hospital room, a boy continued to sketch his superhero, this time adding a mysterious figure with kind eyes and a heart full of gold.